All right, good morning, everyone. It's 11 o'clock. We're going to get started here. Today's class is on the Eastern Bluebird. Our presenter is Valerie Kenyon Gaffney, a master gardener and a member of the Virginia Bluebird Society. So with that, Valerie, if you want to just take it away.
Great, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Thomas, for your wizardry behind the screen. To Christina and Robin for your admin assistance. As mentioned, I am president of the Virginia Bluebird Society. I am a master gardener. I am a member of the Virginia Native Plant Society. I am a member of Prince William Wildflower Society and 2 garden clubs. And I say that because I call myself a cross-pollinator. All those organizations allow me to bring together my passion for bluebirds and other native cavity nesters and native plants. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I hope at the conclusion of this presentation that perhaps you too will become a cross-pollinator. So shall we get started? So for many years, the Eastern Bluebird was as prevalent in Virginia as the robin. And then between about 1920 and 1970, as a result of human activities and competition for nesting sites from invasive species and a couple of, or several, really harsh winters, the population of the bluebird declined almost to the point of extinction. And thus in 1978 in Silver Spring, Maryland, the North American Bluebird Society was founded. And NABS, along with its affiliate members, which includes the Virginia Bluebird Society, which was founded right here in Northern Virginia in 1996, came together to promote and protect the bluebird population and to promote and protect other native cavity nesters. So, I'm sorry. So let's quickly run through the life cycle of a bluebird. Throughout the winter, bluebirds, and they do stay here in Virginia year-round, throughout the winter, they roost together, they flock together in family groups, and they roost in trees. They also have been known to roost in nesting boxes during particularly bad weather. And then come February, the male will break away from the family group and go out seeking a suitable nesting site. And because there are never enough nesting sites and the bluebirds protect their site, their territory, very aggressively, fights do result. And this is a picture of 2 male bluebirds fighting over a territory. Eventually, one of the males prevails. He wins the heart of a female, and the courtship begins. During the courtship, the male will escort the female around to various nesting sites. He does a lot of singing to her. He does a lot of wing waving. And as you can see here, he feeds her. Once they have selected where they're going to build their nest, for the next several weeks, they will defend that very aggressively. And their behavior at this time is pretty bizarre because, and this could go on for weeks if the weather's not warm enough, you will see both of them flying in and out of the box, checking it out, in and out throughout the day. They might fly away, they'll come back, but essentially what they're doing is protecting this box and this territory from any other male moving in. Then, when the weather is warm enough, nest building begins. So prior to the nest building, the male will have flown in and out of the nest box carrying nesting materials. He never leaves anything inside. He just goes in and out, apparently showing her what he expects her to do, I guess, because ultimately the nest building responsibility falls entirely on the female. It typically takes 3 or 4 days to build a nest, but depending actually, I think, on the age of the birds, especially if they're a younger pair, it might be their first season, or if the weather is troublesome, it could take as long as 12 days. Then, once the nest is complete and the weather is warm enough, which means her hormones have kicked in, egg laying begins. And she typically lays 1 egg per day in the morning for anywhere from 3 to 6 days. And that's dependent on the size of that clutch. She doesn't start to incubate or warm the eggs until they're all laid, because they all need to hatch and they all need to fledge at the same time. And yes, occasionally you will come across white bluebird eggs. About 6% of bluebird eggs are white, and that is a result of the female lacking the gene to color the eggs blue as they pass through her oviduct. And these eggs, when they hatch, the hatchlings will be normal in every way. They are not leucistic, they are not albino. They're absolutely a normal bluebird. They just came out of a white egg. So incubation is about 2 weeks long. And during this time, the female rarely leaves the nest, occasionally for food, but the male will also bring food to her during the incubation period. She develops what's called a brood patch on her chest, which warms up to 107 degrees. And this is what she does to keep the eggs warm. Throughout the incubation period, she also continually turns the eggs to keep the embryo from sticking to the shell. If she doesn't turn it and the embryo sticks to the shell, the chick will not be able to break through. So after about 2 weeks, hatching begins, and the hatchling develops what's called an egg tooth, and it uses it to, as you can see here, peck a hole in the shell. That allows oxygen to come into the shell, that allows the hatchling to emerge, and then it breaks out of its shell, and voila, we got baby chicks. So the female will either carry away the discarded shells far away from the nest to protect against predators, or she will eat them, and she does this in order to replenish the calcium that's been depleted in the course of laying the eggs. And thus begins the endless cycle. Both parents will feed the birds, the nestlings, as often as 5 times per hour all day long. And as the nestlings get bigger, the food gets bigger. The nestlings will determine who gets fed first. The hungriest one pushes itself to the front of the box. The male or female, they both feed them, appears with food. The nestling eats it, stands up, defecates, moves to the back of the box. The parent then removes the fecal sac, which is what you see down here, and takes it far away from the nest as a protection against predators. I want to stop for a minute and consider this feeding cycle. A typical first brood has 5 nestlings. They're fed 2 feedings per hour by 2 parents. So that's 4 feedings for 15 hours a day. So put that another way, it's as many as 20 trips per hour to the nest box, 15 hours a day for 17 to 18 days. Now, if that doesn't exhaust you, think about it. 300 trips to the grocery store every day for 18 days. And then the question is, where is the nearest grocery store and how well stocked is it? Hold that thought. Meanwhile, the growth rate is astounding. Here they are at about 7 days old. Their eyes are still closed, but their feathers have begun to emerge. Here they are at about 13 days old. You can tell that there's a white eye ring around the eye. And then at about a little over 2 weeks, fledge day comes. They all leave the nest, not at the same time, but within the same hour, and hopefully land safely in a nearby tree. At which point, Dad takes over and he teaches the fledglings how to fly. He teaches them how to hunt for food. And if food and weather are cooperative, the female will go back and start all over again. Depending on the availability of food and the weather, a bluebird pair can have as many as 3 broods in a season. Now, typically, the second and third broods are 4 or 3 eggs. They never repeat with the 5 eggs. And in case you're wondering, and I'm sure you are, bluebird nest boxes are not just for bluebirds. Chickadees nest in them, tree swallows, and house wrens. But unlike bluebirds and house wrens, chickadees and tree swallows only have 1 brood per season. And if it's a cold, rainy spring, while the tree swallow may lay eggs, if the weather is bad, if there's no food, tree swallows will abandon the nest because it's important for them to survive to the next season. Now, let's switch gears for a minute. And let's talk about supporting the bluebird population. The first thing we can do is protect bluebird habitat. Bluebirds like open country. They like patchy vegetation, low grass. They feed on the ground. Perfect habitat are meadows, old fields, golf courses, cemeteries. Their first choice, though, is a dead tree. They are secondary cavity nesters, which means they prefer to nest in a hole that's been left by a woodpecker. However, lacking a natural cavity, they very happily move into a nest box. Now, what makes a good nest box? Well, the floor space needs to be at least 4 inches by 4 inches square. The entrance hole has to be 1.5 inches exactly. No perch. Thick roof or shingles to protect against the summer sun. It needs to have either a front or a side opening, which means that the side of the box will open down for easy inspection and for clean out. And it needs predator guards. They should be mounted on a metal pole. They should never be mounted on a tree or a fence post. If you mount a bluebird nest box on a tree or a fence post, what you are essentially doing is setting up what I call a black snake buffet. Snakes can easily climb trees, easily climb fence posts. They will happily do that. And if you've ever opened a nest box and found it full of black snake and no babies, it's pretty disheartening. The other thing that we need to do, or maybe the most important thing, is to protect them from invasive species. In the mid-1800s, the house sparrow and the European starling were introduced to the United States. They very quickly took over. They are both very aggressive predators to bluebirds. A house sparrow has no problem with attacking and killing the bluebird adults. It has no problem entering the nest box and stealing the eggs or pecking holes in the eggs. It has no problem entering the nest box and killing the babies. So if you have a nest box on your property and you have house sparrows, you really have an obligation to protect your bluebirds from house sparrows. Starlings are equally aggressive. The difference is because the hole in a nest box is only 1.5 inches, the starling can't get in. But besides protecting them from house sparrows and European starlings, we need to protect them from cats. That's both feral and domestic. According to Cornell University's website, allaboutbirds.org, and I quote, cats are estimated to kill more than 2.4 billion birds annually in the US. They are the #1 human-caused reason for the loss of birds, aside from habitat loss. As we all know, cats are natural predators. It's in their genes to hunt, and not necessarily because they're hungry, as any of you may know who's had a cat bring a mouse up from the basement and deposit it by its food bowl. If you own a cat, keep your cat indoors. Your cat will live longer, and your native birds will live. So what else can we do? Well, we can provide a water source, which means a heated bird bath in the winter. And equally important, or perhaps more important, is a food source. So remember the 300 trips to the grocery store every day for 18 days? If you feed them, they will come. Between spring and fall, a bluebird's diet is 42% caterpillars, 14% spiders, and 22% crickets and grasshoppers. So I ask you, where's the grocery store? Well, it's in your backyard, it's in your neighborhood, it's in your community. If the landscape in your community is predominantly non-native species, you have a food desert. Your ecosystem, your food web will not support the Lepidoptera species that birds rely on for food. According to Dr. Ptolemy, and I quote, in a comparison of Lepidoptera larvae produced on native and alien woody plants in Oxford, PA, native plants supported 35 times more caterpillars, the preferred source of protein for most bird nestlings, than alien plants. So imagine going into your, end quote. Imagine going into your local grocery store and the only thing that's on the shelf is diet soda and cheese puffs. How long would you survive? How long would your kids survive on that diet? Think about that. According to Heather Holm, the author of Pollinators of Native Plants, 90% of herbivorous insects are specialists. They are able to digest only those plants with which they co-evolved. What I'm showing here is a list of woody plants and the number of Lepidoptera species that they support, specific to My zip code, 22192. Oak, 513 species. Black cherry, 390. Birch, 321 species. Willow, 316 species. Maple, 274 species. Crabapple, 264. Poplar, 259. Blueberry, 250. Hickory, 239. And pine, 238. I want to talk particularly about pine trees right now because they are a host plant for I stumble over this one, sawfly larvae. So you know the saying, your mom may have told you when you were younger, you know, if you're hungry enough, you'll eat anything. Well, when it's a cold, damp spring and there are no other insects out, bluebirds can raise their first brood on sawfly larvae. I think that's a really strong argument to make sure that there are pine trees in your neighborhood. The list that you see in front of you, I got it from the National Wildlife Federation. You go in, the address is on the bottom, you enter your zip code, and it will bring up a list of plants native to your particular area by zip code and the number of species that it supports. Here we have a list of perennials and the number of species that they support. A picture here of goldenrod, 114 species. Strawberries, 73. Those are native strawberries, by the way. Sunflower, 66. Joe Pye, 33. Violet, 30. Rose mallow, 29. Switchgrass, 28. Native geraniums, 27. Water parsnip, which I had never heard of until I plugged in my zip code. And lupine, 26. Again, here's the address down below. Make a note of it. And this afternoon, you can go in and see what's native to your neighborhood. Now, then the question is, you're going to say to me, well, how do I know they're going to grow there? Well, something got out of order. Well, anyhow. So, anyhow, the balance of their diet, particularly in winter when insects are scarce, is comprised of small fruit. And here's a list of native fruit-bearing shrubs and trees. Eastern red cedar, red chokeberry, flowering dogwood, red osier dogwood, American elderberry, common hackberry, white sassafras, serviceberry, dwarf sumac, smooth sumac, Virginia creeper. All these plants are native to Virginia. Here we are. So your question is, but will it grow? Well, here are 3 publications that I rely on heavily to inform what I plant in my backyard. The first one is a publication of Plant Nova Natives. It's native plants for Northern Virginia. The other publication is Native Plants for Wildlife Habitat and Conservation Landscaping. That's produced by the Fish and Wildlife Service. And then the third is a fairly new publication, Planting for Wildlife in Northern Virginia, and that's produced by the Loudon Wildlife Conservancy. If you go on either of these websites, Plant Nova Natives or fws.gov, you can download PDF files of these. And if you're interested in the planting for wildlife in Northern Virginia, you can go on their website and order it. So somewhere in my research for this presentation, I ran across an author who recorded that it had seen a parent feeding a nestling a berry that was non-native.
Mm.
And I don't remember what the berry was. Unfortunately, I don't remember where I read it. But the fact is that the nestling spit the non-native species berry out. It refused to eat it.
Mm.
So,
Not really spit, but.
well, refused to eat it. So I'd like to close with this quote from Dr. Ptolemy. A plant that has fed nothing has not done its job. Native plants feed native species. It's that simple. So I would say plant more natives. How can Virginia Bluebird Society help you help our bluebirds? Well, we have 3 grant programs that we fund. The one I'd like to highlight today is the school nest cam grant. We will provide nest boxes and cameras to schools. They can wire the camera into their library, and the kids, when they get back to school, can observe from nest building through fledging. And then we also have a Young Birder Scholarship, which provides $500 to a high school or college student who wants to attend either a summer camp or a workshop, something like that. And as president of VBS, I would certainly be remiss if I did not invite you to join us. Membership is only $10. You can go on our website, www.virginiabluebirds.org. You can join there, or you can download an application. And I hope you will join us. All of our funds, membership support our grant programs, which protect our bluebirds and other native cavity nesters. Here's a list of references and resources that I used in the course of my research. It's probably really hard to read, and I'm sure that maybe like Christina or Robin might be able to make a copy of this, and we can email it to anybody who's interested. And then finally, I'd like to thank these folks listed here who provided the photographs that we've used in our VBS presentation. Thank you very much. Any questions?
There's lots of questions. Are you reading them, Thomas, or me?
You can read them, Robin.
Okay. Right. What was the name of the wildflower book Nancy gave in class the other night? I guess. Sorry, never mind.
No.
There's lots of questions. And I'm just now. What temperature is warm enough?
Oh, I'm going to say probably 60 degrees or so. You know, I probably shouldn't say that with any degree of authority. I don't know the answer to that. I'll get it.
And this one's interesting because I've seen the same with my purple martin box. It says, I have bluebirds that have taken over a martin compound. There are 3 different couples in there every summer for 3 summers now. And is that unique with males fighting for territory?
So the participant is asking about bluebirds nesting in purple martin houses?
Well, if they're asking the same thing that I have seen, I found that they don't nest in it, but they hang out because it's a good vantage point. And so they just, I don't know about the original questions from Mary Jo, but they do hang out in my purple martin, and no purple martins, just bluebirds chatting away.
On the structure, or they actually go in the gourds?
In mine, I've seen them go in the houses. I'm not sure. Mary Jo, are you there? Do you want to unmute yourself and ask the question?
Yeah, my question is just that. I just thought that with what you were saying about bluebirds defending their territory, I mean, and I didn't know that before this presentation. I thought it was interesting that the bluebirds were all, these three couples were using the same box. It has 6 holes in it, so they're each nesting on a different side of the box, but they're definitely raising young in there. We clean it out every year, and there's nests in there.
That's very interesting. I've not heard of that. There's a fella on our board, VBS board, Mike Bishop from, I think he's from Centerville. That's not, I don't know where he lives. Doesn't matter. Mike Bishop is very active in the Purple Martin organization here in Northern Virginia. That would be a really good question for him. I've not heard of bluebirds nesting in Purple Martin boxes, but you're seeing it. So I find that very interesting. What I will say, there's a fella down, and this is not Purple Martins, this is about tree swallows. So there's a fella down in Charlottesville who for about 3 years now has been conducting research about pairing boxes. And what Doug does is he puts 2 boxes on one pole because his experience has been, if the tree swallows get here first, they will nest in the box, which is not a problem because they only have 1 brood. And then once that fledges, you can clean out the box and then a bluebird will use it afterwards. But, and bluebirds and tree swallows, bluebirds feed on the ground, tree swallows feed in the air. So that's why they can coexist. But I don't know a thing about bluebirds and Purple Martins. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
it's funny because it's the same at my house. I have 1 pair that they go in and out. It's too high up there for me to see if there's eggs, but they do go in the little rooms.
Gourds? Yeah.
No, they go in like she described. They go in the little rooms.
So you have an actual house. It's not a setup like it's at the teaching garden with gourds, right?
Yeah, ours is, well, yeah, mine is rectangular and there's 6 rooms on one side and 6 rooms on the other side. And the bluebirds hang out there. They always do, and they go in the rooms. And I'm not sure if they're nesting.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, my house isn't up really high either, and maybe that's helpful too. It's about 10 feet off the ground.
Interesting.
And it's more square than it is rectangular.
You can see on this list of my references and resources, the one down here, cialis.org. If you want to know anything about bluebirds, this gal, Bette Zimmerman Smith, is a member of the NABS board, and she truly is my go-to when I have a question about bluebird behavior. So I'm going to check with Bette this afternoon about bluebirds in
Martin boxes.
Yeah, I want to know.
Okay, so I'm going to combine 2 questions. Do they like a specific type of box, and does the box need to be empty?
Do they like a specific type of box? Well, yes. And there are several different styles out there. Virginia Bluebird Society recommends what we call the Carl Little box. The pictures that you saw in my presentation, most of them were Carl Little boxes. The plans for that can be found on our website. They're very easy to build. Scout troops often build them. It's important they have an 1.5-inch entrance hole. It's important that, critically important on the inside of the box, below the hole, they're called Kerf Marks, and there are lines in the box, sort of cuts in the box. And if you have a bluebird nest box that doesn't have those cuts in, you should get a piece of hardware cloth and staple it underneath the hole. And the reason that's so important is because when tree swallows fledge, they have to climb up and out. So if the interior box doesn't have those kerfs or that hardware cloth, your trees, if a tree swallow were to nest in there, they wouldn't be able to get out. They need to have ventilation around the top because, as you can well imagine, it can get really hot in there in the summer. It's important that you be able to open them because although a bluebird will reuse a nest, we don't recommend it. And the reason we don't, and this is really important, and it was not something I mentioned earlier, but I didn't mention it in the presentation, but there's a real risk of infestation from ants. They'll climb up the pole. If you have a metal, by the way, if you have a metal pole, you can put a smear of Vaseline on it. Ants won't cross that. Never, somewhere you're going to read that somebody recommends tanglefoot. Do not use tanglefoot. That's this nasty tar-like stuff. And if it gets on the feathers of the bird, it will, the bird's not going to be able to fly. It's going to get killed or it's going to die. The other risk to reusing nests is blowfly infestation. And you can't necessarily see them, but they can be in there, and if they hatch, they literally suck the lifeblood out of the chicks. So that's why we strongly recommend, as soon as a brood fledges, remove the old nest, sweep out the box, check for blowflies, check for ants, check for wasps, and within a couple days, if the time is right, they'll happily build another one.
Okay, so do they not mate for life? They have new partners each year?
I don't know the answer to that. I know that they certainly mate for the season. I believe, yes, they do mate for life. So if they both survive the winter, there are lots of people who say they can recognize their pair when they start nesting again in the spring. So I would say yes.
Okay, if not covered already, would like to know about placement of nesting boxes. And I'd like to say we have so many questions. We have 40 questions after this one, so we.
I got to move along quickly.
Yes.
Okay. So I live in a townhouse. My backyard is not fenced. I have a nest box in my backyard, very close to the common space. I have had bluebirds in my backyard. I also have food available for them. They should be about 300 yards apart if you're going to have multiple boxes. Never put them under a tree because a snake can drop down. Keep them away from brushy areas because that's where wrens, that's perfect habitat for wrens. And if wrens take over your nest boxes, you got a real problem. So on the edge of an open area, golf courses are an ideal site. Cemeteries, if they're not covered with trees. Does that answer the question?
I think so. And I think you already answered this one. We are afraid to clean out our box and discourage them from returning. Do we need to worry about that? But I think you already.
Clean out the box. Clean out the box.
And I think you also answered, how do we keep wrens out of the box?
I did not.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so the male wren shows up first. And if there are multiple, well, it doesn't matter if there's multiple boxes, but if there are multiple boxes, it's very interesting. The male wren will go around. We have a real problem, by the way, we have a real problem with this up in the teaching garden with wrens. the male will go around and he will fill the box with twigs. And as many as are in the area, he can fill. Then when he selects a mate, he takes her around, he shows her all the boxes. She finally decides on one. She goes inside, and in the back of the box, in the stack of twigs, she will build her nest. In the meantime, the other boxes that have the wren nests in them are called false nests. Now, because wrens are a protected species, you can't remove those false nests until you are sure that she has selected one and has built a nest in it. But it's very important to do what you can to deter the house wrens from taking over your boxes. Sometimes there's nothing you do except move it. If it's too close to brushy areas, they're going to take over. Answer the question?
Hi, I'm back. I was muted.
Oh, okay.
Should you put up a nesting box to encourage them into your area?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes, 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 yes. Next question.
Does it make a big difference if the homeowner provides mealworms, live or frozen?
Not frozen, not frozen, freeze, dried. Okay, so you can feed mealworms as a supplement, but there's not enough, and I don't know that, but it's like the scientific word escapes me right now, but they're not nutritious enough to raise a brood on. I personally supplement in the winter with mealworms. I have a mealworm feeder. I feed fresh, live. If you can attract them to your mealworm feeder, start by using fresh, and you can then begin to mix in the freeze-dried ones. I know they're much less expensive, but I would not feed them this time of year. And I would never put out more than probably, 15 or 20 once a day.
And someone said their bluebirds are not touching the mealworms. Any idea why?
If it's this time of year, it's probably because there's lots of really luscious caterpillars out there. I mean, you look at a big, fat, juicy caterpillar, and you look at a little tiny mealworm, and wish I could think of a good analogy. So should I feed you a steak, or should I feed you
a bacon bit?
There you go, Robin. You got to eat a lot of bacon bits, right? Or
Right.
I can feed you a steak. So, you can eat a big juicy caterpillar, or a cricket or a spider, or you can eat a little tiny mealworm.
They're fun to watch them eat bugs. I mean, they really clean up the yard well.
Yes, they do.
If checking boxes, how much caution is necessary during the fledge period?
Never check the boxes. You should check your box weekly, but never check the box after 14 days. So they hatch, and for 2 weeks you can check the box, but beginning on the 14th day, stop, because that could result in premature fledging. And they typically fledge at 17, 18 days. So, if you keep a good calendar, then you know when to stop. And you certainly will know when they fledge, because you can walk up to the box and listen, and it'll be dead quiet, and you'll know they're gone. And then you can open the box, clean it out, and they'll start again.
How late in the season will they lay their last clutch?
In this area, in Virginia, Okay, for example, last summer, I have a trail in Dumfries that I monitor. My last clutch last year was in July, and I attribute that to the heat. That I think the females are smart enough to know that they don't want to lay eggs in a box that's going to be over 100 degrees for a couple of weeks, right?
Right.
There was a clutch that fledged only about 2 weeks ago at the teaching garden. So if you back that up, you know, that was, you know, sometime mid to late August that they were still laying eggs in the teaching garden.
Well, Margaret says she uses dry mealworms with suet.
In the winter, yes.
All right, here's one. I bought a bluebird box and a pair immediately moved in. When the babies were almost ready to leave the nest, both parents disappeared and the babies starved. Why? Why do you think that happened?
I think the parents were victims of predators.
Oh, it said, would the parents leave because of all the activity? There was an open house next door.
Nope. Nope. They are, you know, so if you go up and you check a box and you open the box and the female's sitting on it. Now this is with bluebirds. Tree swallows, you can open the box and the female will not leave if she's incubating. But you know, you open a box with a bluebird in it and she'll fly away and she'll hang out in the tree and she'll watch you. And then when you close up the box and you move on, she'll come back. So nothing that happened in your neighborhood scared the birds away. They were obviously a victim of predation.
Well, they're wondering if someone 2 yards away had recently sprayed for mosquitoes. Could that have killed them?
It probably depends on what they sprayed, and if insecticide, I would say yes, it could kill them.
Let me jump in on that. Most of the mosquito sprays are larvicides, which are designed to poison the mosquito larva, which I'm not sure if bluebirds go after mosquito larvae, but it is possible that that poison could be transferred, but generally those are targeted to mosquitoes and it shouldn't really harm the birds. I think predator is probably the more likely scenario.
Thank you, Thomas.
How do you protect from house sparrows?
You can either be passive or aggressive. Passive protection is every time they build a nest in your box, you remove it. If they build a nest and they lay eggs, you remove them. There are also traps that you can set inside the box. Now you have to pay attention to them because when it triggers, you want to make sure that what you've got in the box is a house sparrow. And if all else fails and your neighborhood is full of house sparrows, there's nothing you can do, just give up. Give up. And there's a lot of, and I'm not saying I advocate for killing house sparrows, but I do advocate for removing the nest and I do advocate for getting rid of their eggs.
Okay, I bought a Gilbertson nest box. They did build a nest, but it seemed very small. Do you recommend a particular style or size?
If you bought a Gilbertson style bluebird nest box, that's fine. There are lots of people throughout the country that use them.
And then a question about American holly, good source?
There's a whole host of native plant sources. There's, I don't know if Earth Sangha has them. There's a couple of native plant nurseries out in Loudoun County Um, I don't have a list right here in my hand.
I think you gave a list earlier in the presentation.
Well, not for sources, not for.
Oh, for sources, yeah.
Yeah. You know what? If you go on Plant Nova Natives, I think that there's a list on there of native plant.
Their website has nurseries where they recommend buying native plants.
And I think Virginia Native Plant Society has a list as well, but for sure there's one on Plant Nova Natives.
How do you keep the birds from flying into your windows?
You can put film up on your windows, which you probably don't want to do. Another thing you can do is you can take like little Mylar strips and hang those off your window. What you need to do is have something that's moving so that they can see movement in your window. Or if you use film, they can't see themselves.
So I just received 2 houses. Should I hang them now or wait until spring?
Hang them now. And the reason is, first of all, you will be providing a roosting box over the winter if we have bad weather. And it's not uncommon for the male to, checking out the neighborhood right now. And he might go, I know there's a nest box over here in Robin's yard. Come spring, he might consider it. Mm-hmm. So absolutely, the best time to put up a box is in the fall. And if you can't do it until spring, then, earlier in the spring, the better.
Should they clean the boxes between broods?
Yes. Remove the nest, scrape out the walls, and if you've got tree swallows, the walls are going to be pretty messy. You can use like a putty knife or a paint scraper, remove the nest, sweep it out. Absolutely.
And is there something you can put on the front to keep out other birds?
If the hole is 1.5 inches, it's going to keep out everything but cavity nesters. And although we call ourselves Virginia Bluebird Society, and it's North American Bluebird Society, we want to promote and protect all our native cavity nesters. So we like chickadees. I personally love to open a box and see a tree swallow nest in there. They nest once. If you've never seen a tree swallow nest, it starts out looking very much like a bluebird nest, but then she lines it with feathers, and then she makes sort of a feather arch, and you open that and it looks like the most beautiful feather bed you've ever seen. So we don't want to keep out other cavity nesters. We want to keep out house sparrows, but that's another issue.
Let me just, Thomas, what time does this session end?
12 o'clock.
Oh,
okay. Well, we have 64 questions, so let's go quick. And let me, then also this presentation will be on our YouTube channel as soon as we can get it up, and on our Facebook pages.
And if you have, if I can just say it here, if you've got a question about bluebirds, you can go on the Virginia Bluebird Society website and you can, send me your questions. You can also go on our Facebook page and put in questions. We'll get back to you. If it's plants that you're questioning, certainly, the Cooperative Extension Master Gardener desk is the place to go for that.
Master Gardener at pwcgov.org is our help desk. How high off the ground should the bluebird box be?
5 to 6 feet.
And where's the best place to get the predator protectors for bird boxes?
you make them. Right now, there's no source that I know where you can buy them. Well, that's not true. Wild Birds Unlimited up in Gainesville, I think they sell the snake guard, which is the one that goes on the pole. But you can also go on the VBS website, and there are plans, and all that it really is just a piece of metal ductwork, and you put a cap on it, and you drill a hole through your pole, and you want that to wobble. The bottom needs to wobble. The top is just I don't know if it's a quarter or half-inch wire that's just been folded and tied together. So the plans are on our website.
I have a number of questions about keeping sparrows out, but I think you talked about that. Does VBS have a plan of action for volunteers who monitor bluebird houses in a park setting? That's a good question.
Ask that again.
Does VBS have a plan of action for volunteers who monitor bluebird houses in a park setting? From Vicki.
Well, we have coordinators in many of the counties in Virginia. For example, Fairfax County, I think there's like over 60 trails there that are VBS sponsored, and each trail has a trail lead, and that person recruits the volunteers to monitor the trail, and then the data is recorded, and it works its way up through the county coordinator to the data analyst with VBS in Prince William County. I'm the county coordinator. So for example, we just installed a new trail this year at Bristow Battlefield, and we recruited trail leads to monitor that trail. If you're interested in monitoring a trail, drop me an email and I will connect you with the county coordinator wherever you're located. We are always looking for volunteers, and we conduct training every spring on how to monitor a trail.
So, and I just want to say, Dana also said her Martin house is way up 20 feet and she has bluebirds in her Martin house too. But we are sadly out of time, Valerie, and we will be posting this presentation on our YouTube channel, which Christina has posted. We will also have it on our Facebook pages, and we can continue the questions there, right, Valerie?
Yes, we can. Happily.
Do you have any address or Facebook pages you want to give out where they can ask you more questions?
VirginiaBluebirds.org.
Perfect.
Go on there. I will give you I have an email account that I keep only for Virginia Bluebird Society business, so I'm happy to share that as well. It's VKG3105@gmail.com. VKG3105@gmail.com. And if I don't have the answer, I have a whole really smart board of directors behind me to help me.
I really want to thank you, Valerie. That was excellent. And we all look forward to having our bluebirds in our yards and eating all those caterpillars.
Plant more natives.
Plant more natives.
Right plant, right place.
Exactly. I look forward to all of you coming to our YouTube channel and watching the presentation as soon as we have it up. And thank you everyone for joining us.
Yes, thank you everyone. Next week we're taking off, and in 2 weeks on the 14th, we will continue our weekly Wednesday classes. Thank you all for coming.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, Valerie. Bye, Thomas.
If you enjoyed this video, please let us know with your questions, comments, and suggestions for other classes and videos. You can reach us at mastergardener@pwcgov.org. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.